Hello there, how are we doing? So back on the RS2 again, and if you saw the last video, then next job up is sorting out the alternator. So we got all the radiators in and sorted, all the coolant system filled, but the alternator's making quite a bit of a racket. So I'll just let you have a little listen to that now so you can hear the bearings whining away. So there we go, rather noisy old thing, so best get it removed and get stripping it. So it's not too bad to get out on this, there's enough room, a couple of 17mm at the bottom, and then on the back it's a bit tight to get the positive cable and the other little blue one you see there, a couple of 8mm and a 13mm, and then yeah, these two 17s at the bottom. So got those whipped out and then just fell out really, like I said, quite a bit of room, so not too bad. There's a positive cable, we'll get that taped up so it doesn't catch on anything once the battery's back on. And here it is, on the bench, ready to get stripped down. So it didn't do too bad, 30 years of service, sitting around for a while. There's the funny little mounting hardware, the little geared bar to tension it up. And we'll just have a little listen to those noisy bearings now. Not sounding good at all. So first job was to get the pulley off, so a little 10 spline to hold the centre and then a 24mm spanner to crack that off, and then span it around, got the cover off the back of it and the 4 10mm bolts that hold the two halves of the housing together, and then for the black cover on the back there were just these 3 little Phillips head screws to pop out, and then a couple of little black plastic clips, and then the back came off to show the brushes there, the little voltage regulator, and then split the housing nice and easy. Once the screws are out, this rear bearing just comes straight out of the housing, this one here, so it's just held in on that black bushing that the bearing sits in. There's no screws or anything, so that just came straight out. You see the contacts for the brushes there that are on the rotor. They're a bit worn, but I'm going to struggle to replace those, so we'll be leaving those. And then the front bearing here has a couple of Phillips head screws that hold the bearing in with a little retaining plate. These were a bit more of a fight to get out, and as you can see here, unfortunately, I managed to crack the housing. I took a bit of heat to the screws to try and get them out a bit easier, but I didn't consider the fact that it might expand a bit funny and crack it. But as you see, eventually got those screws out with a bit of drilling the heads out. That's the front bearing there, and then the back bearing. So had a bit of a battle getting those off. A lot of heat, induction heater, ended up cutting them in the end. As you can see, there's a little mark on each side where the bearings were sat, as I had to cut the racers off. Here's one of them. So yeah, a bit of a fight getting those off, but did eventually manage to get them off. Got them all measured and ordered, so we can get some new ones on there. Now at this point you might be wondering why I'm going through all this trouble of ripping the alternator to bits, trying to get these bearings off to press everything back on. Why wouldn't you just, buy a new one or a reconditioned one and get that fitted? Well, unfortunately I only had one option that I could find immediately for a reconditioned unit, and that came in at, with VAT and everything, it came at around £500. So didn't really want to spend that much on something that just had bad bearings, so I thought I'd have a go at stripping it here and getting some bearings back on it and all sorted. So that's what we've gone for. So here's the rotor now that it's out. See those marks again. Not too bad, they'll be fine with a new bearing on, shouldn't cause any issues. Just had to do that unfortunately to get them off because they're a bit of a fight. And on the other side here, on the front side, is the little collar that sat on top of the bearing, so I had to fight that off first. Then I was able to have a go at getting the bearing off. And yeah, caused a bit of burring on the shaft, but nothing too bad, so it'll all be alright. So for the time being, that was it all stripped down. So I got the old bearings measured and the shaft and everything. Got some part numbers off the old bearings as well, and was able to get these new bearings ordered. If you happen to have the same alternator as this, then the bearing sizes for it were 17 by 52 by 17 for the big front bearing, and the rear bearing was 17 by 40 by 12. So that's what you'll be after. You might want to double check there, of course, there could be some difference between some of them. And here we have pressing new bearings on, so they went on a lot easier than they came off, of course. You'll have to excuse the filming a bit, as I had one hand on the trigger for the press, one hand on my phone, and then one eye on my phone and one eye on the bearings as they were getting pressed on to make sure they were square. But it's probably, you'll see I was paying a bit more attention to the pressing than the phone, so it does get a bit wonky sometimes. But that's the bearing pressed on. Now we're just pressing on that little collar that's sat on top with a nice 19mm half socket, which seems to be about spot on size wise to get these pressed on. But yeah, they went on all good. So there we go, all the bearings pressed on, all went fine. And then the next part I decided to get for it was a new voltage regulator with brushes. So this one was still charging when it was on the car, but I just thought whilst it was all in bits, I'd get a new one with a fresh set of bushes in, and be best time to do it really, might as well. So I got one of those on order, and in the meantime I had another little issue that I thought I'd sort. So this back bearing here sits into the rear half of the housing in this plastic little bush carrier, which pop out here, and as you can see, it's definitely seen better days. So there's quite a few bits that have cracked off around the edge, and it's also got a crack through it. So I mean, once it's in there, it wouldn't have really gone anywhere. But I just thought, again, whilst it's all stripped, I might as well have a go at trying to sort something to get it put back together a bit better than it came apart, of course, seeing as I'm sorting the other bits on it. So yeah, you can see there around the top lip there's quite a lot that's cracked off and flaked away and been eaten over the years by the alternator spinning away. So I went ahead and got it all measured with the verniers. Took those measurements and then put them into Fusion 360, did a little design here. It's quite easy to do. It was just a cylinder really with a lip on the top, lip on the bottom, and then went ahead and chucked that over to my 3D printer that I've got. Printed it off in PETG, which should be fine for this application. And here it is printing. So it didn't take too long, it's quite a small print. And the one you're seeing here is actually not the one I ended up using. So this was like the version 1, but it was a little bit too tight on the bearing and a touch loose in the housing. So I went ahead for the second one, I actually printed it the other way up. As you'll see, this one, there's quite a bit of the top lip that sort of flaked off just because of the way the support works on these. So you see that bit there. So I actually printed it the other way up, and I also increased the diameter ever so slightly, so it was, like I say, a touch looser on the bearing and a bit tighter sat in the housing. And the version 2, as you'll see, was spot on really. So here we have the 3D prints. So as I say, the version 2 went a little bit bigger, so this was the first one. It was just a bit too tight to get onto the back of the bearing there. And then the version 2 one here went on fine, printed a lot better, the lip stayed on better, printing the other way up. Slips on there, nice and snug, and then the whole thing goes into the housing nicely, as you'll see. So it just sits in the back there, snugs in, no screws or anything, and that's it for the rear bearing. So for the front half of the housing, obviously I had that bit of a drama where I managed to crack it. It maybe would have been okay once it was all bolted together and back on the car, but there's a mate of mine, Matt, and he went ahead and put a bit of weld on there just to keep it all nice in one piece. And there we go, front half back on, all screwed up, all good, spinning nice and free. And then eventually, after quite a bit of a wait, because the eBay seller was a bit rubbish, the voltage regulator finally turned up about a week late, but all good. You can actually see how much more brush is on the newer one. I didn't realise there'd be quite so much more. I didn't realise just how worn the old one was. As I said, the old one was still working, but I was able to find a matching Bosch part that's a slightly newer version, so that'll be all good and hopefully last many more years, or as long as the rotor lasts anyway. So there we've got the new voltage regulator fitted. Just a couple of Phillips-head screws hold that in. You see the brushes there pressing against the pickups on the rotor. Went on all good, fit as it should, so that's nice. See them in there nice and snug. And then, as you see, I went ahead eventually and did decide to give the whole alternator housing a little lick of paint. Just went like a dark grey that I had about that looked quite cool. Thought that'd be alright. And then the black plastic cover on the back. So it's just 3 little plastic tabs that lock in. And then the 3 little tiny Phillips head screws that go in the back there and holds that all together. So there we go, all back together. Front pulley on, new voltage regulator, new set of bearings, new bushing for the rear bearing, and a fresh coat of paint. You see that bit of weld there from my mate Matt, thanks a lot. Got the alternator remounted, we'll have a little start up, and as you can see, there we go, up to about 14 volts. So back to charging again, and no noise as well. So mission success on that one. Saved about 400 and something pounds. The voltage regulator, which wasn't totally necessary, as like I say, it was charging before, that was 30 something pounds, and then the bearings for both of them were only like 18 pounds. So saved plenty of money on this little repair, and she's all good, no more noise. So I'll do a little comparison of the before and after so you can hear just how noisy it was. But yeah, a lot better now, charging again, so all good to carry on with some more jobs. And unfortunately there are some big ones to sort. So there we go, all sorted, nice and quiet. Can't hear it over the sound of the engine doing all its other bits, to be fair. So all good, all ready to carry on with some other jobs and get this thing back on the road. Thanks for watching again, and do subscribe so you can keep an eye out for more videos. Thanks a lot, bye bye.